Okay, okay, we are ready to go. It's great everybody's here. Thank you for joining us and welcome to anybody who's coming on later and at another time. My name is Lawrence O'Brien from Books Go Social. Everybody here is very welcome and you can ask questions or as we go or as Dave decides. Let me introduce Dave Chesson, who is the mastermind of Kindlepreneur, one of the leading book marketing services or information services, but also founder of a software company related to authors and various other enterprises and really prominent figure in the whole industry, in the independent and traditional publishing industry. I know he works for lots of people. So, Dave, I'm going to hand over to you now. Talk about whatever you want. It's over to you.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just expand on that so everybody can kind of understand my background. I did create Kindlepreneur.com. It's a free website that, and I believe, based off of the amount of traffic, is one of the world's largest for book marketing and self-publishing. I'm also the founder and creator of Publisher Rocket, a book marketing software, as well as Atticus, a book writing and formatting software. I have been a paid consultant to both publishing, to New York Times bestselling authors in both fiction and nonfiction, as well as major publishing companies. I've been fortunate to be able to sit on some of the meetings pertaining to how publishing companies choose which authors to sign and how they treat them, how they come up with the new contract negotiations. And I've also seen people who went from obscurity all the way into becoming big name or house name authors. So it's been a wild career. I've really enjoyed it. And one of the things I love doing is teaching. So with that, I just wanted to see a quick show of hands. Who here is fiction and who is here is nonfiction? Let's start with fiction. Can you raise your hand? Okay. And so I'm going to guess that the people who are off screen will give it a 50-50 with that. So it seems like we have a very strong fiction focus. So a couple of things that I'd love to discuss is some of my favorite tactics for fiction authors. I think that would be a really good topic. Would that be okay, Lawrence?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that I love most, I'm sure you guys have all heard collecting email and getting people to subscribe to your email list is a great maneuver. I personally love that one. And the reason why I love email list building is because when somebody reads one of your books and they enjoy you, that person hasn't exactly become a fan of you yet. They like the one story. And sometimes we talk about on the internet, that it takes about 5 to 7 digital handshakes before somebody actually becomes a fan of you. And so the more opportunities you get to meet somebody digitally, the more opportunity you can start to build that fandom. And there's no easier way to proactively get connected with somebody than to actually to have their email address, to be able to reach out to them, to tell your story, to give them a free book if you have one. All of these things are one more digital handshake that helps you to build an actual fandom or following. Now, one of the biggest questions that I have people always ask is, oh, well, I've either offered a free book or I've put out, an email sign up before and nobody signs up for it. And
I'm listening to something. Sorry.
Here's my favorite tip or trick for authors, okay? Is that what end up happening is authors will write their fiction book. And what they'll do is they'll just offer some random free book for somebody to download. Like, hey, if you like this, go ahead and sign from email list and I'll send you this book. Well, here's the thing. Or maybe they don't even do that. Maybe they just say, hey, sign up for my email list. Most people won't do that. Why? Because they're not a fan of you yet. They're also not a fan of some random story. They're only a fan of the story you just wrote. So what I love to do, and I tell authors this all the time, I told this to Kevin J. Anderson as well as Orson Scott Card, which by the way, that's how his name is. If you don't know, he wrote Ender's Game. Scott loves this and uses this now. Is that you do what I call the Kobayashi Maru tactic? Okay, and what this is. Oh, I know I got a truck fan in here. Okay. So let me explain the Kobayashi Maru for those that don't know what that is. Okay, and then you'll understand the tactic. You see, in Star Trek, all right, we have the Captain Kirk, who is just a maverick. Okay, he is a lone gunner. He's a maverick. He doesn't believe in no-win situations, and he always finds a way. Okay, uh, there's probably more you could describe about him, but let's stick with that. Okay, now we find out that there was this test that was unbeatable, and it's called the Kobayashi Maru. And now, what's interesting is in the original Star Trek, we never got to see the test. We just heard about it, constantly heard of it. It was a defining moment in Kirk's life, right? Was the Kobayashi Maru test. And we don't know how he passed. Now, in the J.J. Abrams movies later, we finally got to see it. But here's the thing, though. If I were a Star Trek writer and I wanted to convince Star Trek readers to download my free book, I would write a little short story on the Kobayashi Maru. And I would offer that. And let me tell you what, the entire Star Trek fandom would have eaten that up because they would have had the inside information, just like all the other crew members knew about. They would have the inside information they'd wanted. It didn't matter if I was a no-name author. I had the Kobayashi Maru. So what I tell fiction authors is, hey guys, when you're writing your fiction book, a really awesome tactic to do is either create a side story or a prelude, but make it be an inside information. Like, let's say, for example, you've got a romance book, okay? And your main character, she is like basically sworn off dating men because of the date from HE double hockey sticks. She keeps calling it that horrible date with Mr. X, right? You never hear about what happened in the date. And later on, the friends are saying, oh, it's not going to be another Mr. X again. Oh, I know. I mean, I can't believe it took me weeks to get the pasta out of my hair. Okay. But you don't hear about what happened. And what you do is you lead through the story. Now, by the end of the story, you offer them, hey, would you like to read about the horrible date with Mr. X? Download my free book. Now, somebody who gets to the end of your book, they're in love with the book. They're in love with the story. They want to continue the story. And you've given them a free path by which to sign up for your email list and to engage in that story more. And now you have two digital handshakes. You've got the first book. You've got that free book you just gave them. Now you got their email address. And every time you email, your name is popping up again. They had curiosity, and you provided some way for them to reach that. And now you're starting to build not only more people signing up, but better people signing up. People who will actually engage with you, that will read the thing that you offer. And so I call that tactic the Kobayashi Maru. So in recap, when you're writing a fiction, if you are trying to increase your email subscribers, or you're trying to improve the relationship with those who are signing up, I recommend thinking creatively about a Kobayashi Maru for that book. And again, like I said, it could be a side story that you build up throughout. It could just be a prelude. It could be a post-credit, which, by the way, I love post-credits, especially for the younger age. Everybody who's watching the Marvel movies will stay to the end of the movie so as to see the post-credit scene. You can create one of those as well. But there's a lot of opportunities for you to build that extra sauce content to be able to really get people excited. Now, before I move on, were there any questions on that? Or Lawrence, did you want to pick that apart?
I thought that was great. Okay, I had to take a note there because I'm writing something new and I need to do that. So you described a couple of different types of side story. So what are they again? What are they again? The different types of stories or extras that we can include. Could you just go over that again?
Yeah, you could do a prelude. You could do a side story or a side quest, or you could do a post-credit scene. Okay. I think the side.
Sorry, what's a post-credit?
So post-credit, have you ever seen any of the Marvel movies?
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's almost become the staple in movies where if you wait until the end of the credits, you can see this little 15-second clip.
Yeah.
And in that, it reveals something about the next story. So it gets people all excited. So, and I would say it's even better for if you're writing if you're writing in a genre where it's heavy in 20 to 30-year-olds, because the 20 and 30-year-olds have been now groomed for post credits thanks to the movie industry. That was probably a bad word. They've been conditioned for looking for post-credit scenes. And if you have a post-credit scene, you know, something that could like allude to the next person or allude to the next problem or something like that, that is a great opportunity to really build curiosity, get them to want to scratch that itch, and then get more excited about your next book. So
Great. Thank you for going over that again. Yeah, that's great. I've taken some notes. I'm writing a new series and I'm going to include that. I'm going to do that. Really good. So go ahead.
yeah. So one other idea, just to kind of help with some of these ideas, I told about the date of Mr. X, right? So if you're on a date with Mr. X, one of the things that I've seen is like in a sci-fi military or so, there was one particular character called Bishop, and Bishop, the side joke of the squad was, he got his name, but you got to be on the inside to understand how he got his name. And there was all these little clues that alluded to the fact that Bishop, it was something about a certain battle. Nobody talks about it, and that's it. And then the book that this author offered was that battle, the name of that battle. And then in that, it reveals how Bishop got his squad name of Bishop. And the key thing, one thing I will say is if you do a story like this, a Kobayashi Maru, you need to make sure that when you provide the free book, it is not critical information. Okay. So what would be bad is like you make your free book be the real ending of your book, or it's a secret information that needs to be known. People feel cheated when you do that. But knowing how Bishop's name became Bishop, that's not critical. It doesn't change the course of the story. What it does is there's curiosity. You want to be an insider. You want to learn, and be like one of the squad members who all knows that, Bishop got it because. But if I choose not to, it doesn't ruin the story. So that's a very important thing to kind of combine. Okay. All right. So with that, we've talked a little bit about just a really fun, easy hack that fiction authors can do to increase their email subscribers as well as to get more engagement. When it comes to fiction, one of the other things that I think is really important is your fiction keywords. Okay. Now, what's funny is that I actually wrote an article on fiction keywords, like how to come up with keywords that really work with fiction books. And it was hilarious. I wrote this article, and you can find out on Google by just Googling fiction keywords. Okay. 2 weeks later, Amazon promoted my article, that exact article, and then they updated their frequently asked questions section on keywords to literally they copied and pasted a whole section of my article in there. So I was like, all right, Amazon, I'll take that as some respect, I guess, but kind of copying, but okay.
Your Google hit #1. I just looked it up.
Yes, ma'am. Yep. And so here's the thing. When you go, so a lot of fiction authors will say that keywords aren't that big of a deal. And I have a load amount of data to say that that's not true. Because one thing I want you guys to understand is when you're choosing your 7, so you understand when you go to publish your book on Amazon, you have the 7 KDP boxes, right? And you can choose words in there. Those are a lot more important than you think. And it's not just about discoverability. It's about helping Amazon to understand where to put your book. Okay. So an example, let's go ahead and look at like a physical store, like Barnes & Noble. Okay. Barnes & Noble worker gets a book and they're supposed to put it on the right shelf. Okay. Now they look at it and they see the cover, they see the title, there's no subtitle. The person goes, okay, well, it could be, I'm not really sure. Maybe it's Wiccan, but is that fantasy or is that nonfiction? Is that religion? And so they just decide to put it in fantasy. Now, what if it was a religious book, right? Well, people going and looking at fantasy, they're going to see this book. They don't care about that, and they're going to skip over it. And it might be an amazing book, but it's in the wrong place, and the store is showing it to the wrong people. That is a good way of looking at your keywords, because if you're doing this incorrectly, Amazon won't know really where to put it. Your book won't show up when people are searching for it. your book won't show up next to the right kind of books and shown to the right kind of readers. And so when it comes to choosing your keywords, you really need to make sure that you take the right approach and understand the right phrases. So what are the right phrases? Well, the best way to understand keywords for fiction books is that you need to think like a shopper. Now, I know we all shop for fiction books, but hear me out for a second, okay? The real process by which people search for their next read is they'll start with a broad phrase, and then they'll keep adding words to that phrase until it finally describes the book that they want. So, case in point, the person might start with the word fantasy book. And then Amazon presents them with a whole bunch of books. Now, what are the chances that Amazon gets the right fantasy book? Like, I mean, come on, is it YA? Is it dark fantasy? Is it epic fantasy? Is it dragon fantasy? Is it this? Like, it's going to scatter a whole bunch. And the shopper goes, okay, well, I'm thinking like epic war. So then so literally their search becomes fantasy book, epic war. Because let's face it, when we shop on Amazon, we don't delete and edit. We just keep adding words to help filter it down. So now I have fantasy book, epic war. And then I'll look and I'm like, okay, they're showing me some weird results. What I'm really thinking about is something where like goblins and dwarves, kind of like Lord of the Rings. So I'll throw in goblin dwarves. So now my keyword phrase is fantasy book, epic war, goblin dwarves. But, by golly, I've got a whole bunch of young adult ones that look too cartoonish. Now I've got to change it, and I want it to be dark. Okay, maybe I'll even throw in a necromancer in there because that's not a YA. And so all of a sudden my phrase becomes this garble, if you will, but very descriptive terms. And so one of the things that I wrote about in this article is how to break down all the categories of those descriptive terms. And when it comes to the types of words that people will use to help filter down, okay, is that they will start by adding in things like times and settings. Okay, so time periods and settings. So is it medieval? Is it modern? Is it a Caribbean? Is it a Western? Like these are, geographic locations for time periods. Sometimes the word we use for a setting or a geographic location denotes a time period. Okay. So there might be that. The next one is the main character, the unique identifier of the main character. So is it a single mother, Amish woman, a cowboy, a Civil War general? Is it, an alpha male? Is it a ex-soccer player? Is it an ex-cop? Words that help to really denote who the protagonist is and what makes them into who they are. Okay. So we've got time periods and settings. We've got the main character. All right. And the role of the main character. The next one is what I call the catalyst. Okay. And a catalyst is what really kickstarts the story. Now, the story might not be about this thing, but it's what starts it. So was it, a abusive husband, right? Or abusive relationship. And now it's about finding love again. But what the catalyst to the story was, this person went through an abusive relationship. Was it a plane crash and it became a story of survival? Was it a dragon apocalypse and it's now living in a dragon, apocalyptic world? Is it a virus outbreak? The story isn't about the outbreak of the virus. It's about living in the world after. These are catalysts that start and shoot the fire into the story itself. Okay. The next one is one of my favorites and probably one of the most important ones for a fiction author to really think about. And that's what I call the genre tone. Okay. So let's say romance, right? Romance is, if I type romance book, we're talking about more than 50 shades here. We're talking like 1,000 shades of the different types of romance out there. Okay. You can go all the way on the left with, Christian wholesome romance to all the way to the right, which is like, I don't know, crazy erotica. Okay. And I'm not knocking any genre here. Okay. If you write those, that's like, but what I'm trying to say is to the reader, it is incredibly important that I'm picking up that kind of genre tone. A Christian wholesome romance reader will put in words to make sure they don't get erotica. They will make sure to filter out those kinds. Okay. If it's a psychological thriller, if it's a thriller, they're going to put in like, dark psychological, or they're going to put, gruesome murder. They're going to put some word or phrase that makes sure they get the right kind of thriller and not the wholesome thriller, And so they're going to constantly work to make sure that they define it. And so we as authors need to make sure that our books are showing up with that intent. A great example of an author that got this wrong. They not only got it wrong in their words and descriptions, but they also got it wrong in their cover. There was this lady, and she was writing this book. And by the way, if any, one of my favorite things to do if somebody ever tries to work with me on a book is I'll be like, first off, don't tell me anything about it. Please don't tell me what you write or your genre or anything. Don't tell me what the book's about. Let me see your cover. And I'll look at the cover. And then what I'll try to do is I'll try to describe what kind of book I think it is based off of the cover. Now, this is the first biggest test, because the majority of the time I'll get it wrong, like way wrong, not even close. And this lady had exactly that. She had this cover where I could see the silhouette of a skyline, but the color of the sky itself was like a fuchsia, hot pink, neon, thing. And there's this lady, it's a silhouette of a lady, and she's standing there with like a gun like this. And the silhouette, it looks like she's wearing skin tight clothes. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go with, I was like, I don't even know where to start. Okay, at least the setting is in a city. I'm going to totally guess this is like an ex-cop. And I'm not going to lie, everybody here, I was going to say a stripper because it looked like, but I was trying to be nice to the person. So I was like, I'm going to go ex-cop, but I would have said a stripper with a gun. And that she's a cool, jazzy, hip, 30-year-old, and that's all I can tell you. Like, that's all I got, And she goes, oh, that's nothing like my book. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She was like, well, you're right about the ex-cop. I was like, okay, but she's like in her 50s. Huh. And you use that silhouette. Like, and I understand I'm being very judgmental, and that's not what I intend to be. But when you're talking about marketing, and you got to be a little judgmental here. And I'm like, okay, you misrepresented the main character there, for one, because you're saying that she's in her 50s. That's important, because that's a different type of ex-cop than some 25-year-old wearing a skin suit. Okay. These are off here. Then on top of that too, it turned out that the book was more of like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Seven, but it is a graphic, horrific thriller. And I'm like, there is nothing on that cover that suggests that at all. And then when I asked about her, when we read her book description, she was not using the words to help me understand that. Yes, contextually, it was a murder mystery, and contextually, it was about, a killer on the loose. But she was not using the right phrases to help me understand the genre tone. There was nothing in there that talked about brutal murders, with, flayed skin, or things that would tell me that this is going to be a gory book. This is going to be a horrific thriller. And she had horrible reviews, and the book wasn't bad. Actually, it was pretty good. The problem was that it was marketed for the wrong thing. Amazon didn't know what the book was about. It and her keywords didn't suggest any of this. So it kept putting it next to other, buddy cop, sleuth detective women in the city. And that was not the right spot. The cover made you feel like it was that. The book description didn't make it clear. And so it was one of those times where the marketing and the appeal and the keywords all did not match what the book was about. So one thing I can highly recommend to you is really think about how you describe the genre tone of your book. Do not say it's a fantasy. Do not say it's a romance. It is something more detailed, and that truly is one of the best descriptors for your book. It is the best way to make sure that people get to read it. I'm a huge fan of lit-RPG cultivation. That is a genre tone, okay? And I could and should go even further into that detail. But generally speaking, I'll totally pick up any litter PG cultivation. Yes.
Okay, there's this theory that's been going around for a number of years, which is you have out of the 7 back-end internal keywords that you can put in, is that you might have 5 which are very specific or exact to your genre, and that you might have 2 which are more broad, which would appeal to people just generally interested in things because they may not be aware that they're interested in this specific genre or may not have put in the keywords appropriately. What do you think about that theory of a mix of exact, which you've been describing, and broader keywords?
Yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, uh, we did a experiment about 4 years ago, and if you type into Google 7 Kindle keywords or so, you can read all about that experiment. And we tested it with over 700 books to prove that this was the most optimal way to handle it. And the way to do that is you do your keyword research and you find the 3 to 4 phrases that are perfect fits. Okay, this phrase really is a phrase that people type into Amazon, that people love, that and that isn't too hard. You put exactly that phrase into 3 of the 4 boxes. Now, for the rest of the boxes, say 4, 5, 6, and 7, or 5, 6, and 7, you fill it in with all the other words that it wasn't juicy enough to put as its own, but they do describe your book. And the reason why this works this way is, first off, let me start by saying that in those 7 KDP boxes, you can put 50 characters. Okay, and a character is a letter, a comma, a space. There's 50. So a lot of people said, hey, do I just stuff as many words into each box? And I say, look, if you did your research and you said second chance romance with family is a term that I know for a fact people type into Amazon, that I know that people are buying books, that term totally represents my book, right? Because let's say, actually, that's not a good term. The term is Victorian second chance romance with family. There you go. That's a phrase that a lot of people type in. That's a phrase that a lot of people buy. And so I would not add any more words with that. I would put it into its own box. But let's say, for example, wholesome family was a phrase, but it's not perfect. It's not a combination of some of the things we said. I'll still fit it into one of those bottom boxes. So wholesome family, finding love again, what was it? Disdainful mother-in-law, Victorian parties, masquerades. Like, these are all things that, yes, they help to understand and kind of build what the book is about, but it's not a phrase by itself that helps to sell the book, right? The book being a Victorian second chance romance with family, that's a great phrase that incorporates time period and setting, catalyst, and the genre tone. Right? Actually, I didn't put genre tone in there. That'd be another one. My point, though, is to come back to this, is that when you do your research and you find a phrase that truly represents your book, put it into its own box. And then with the remaining boxes, fill it in with all the words that truly help Amazon to be like, oh, okay, got it. So as I kept saying those words, I think you guys are probably starting to build a story in your head about what this is about. And the story is about a woman who, had a child. She lost her husband. She was looking for love again. This is in the Victorian time period. Clearly, she finds love and somebody who wants to join and make a family again. And she's got a disdainful mother-in-law, and she has to live in high society while have everybody look down on her because she's with child and not married. Like, all of those words that I threw in there randomly, they all build exactly what I just said as a story. And the more you do that, or the better you do that, the better Amazon will know what your book is about, where they should put your book next to. And because, let's face it, Amazon wants to make as much money as it can. So, if they put your book in the right spot, they're going to make more sales. And that's the key. That's why it's so important to make sure that you get your keywords right. Because if you write something like romance, love, and just all these broad terms, Amazon's going to be like, I don't know, I guess it's a romance. That's it. So make sure to really think through those.
Yeah, and of course we have multiple copies of your Rocket software. We've been using that for years, for many years. And I think I picked up that strategy about wide and exact and broad from that article 4 years ago. I think that's where I got it.
Yes,
So
sir.
thank you for all of that. Now, is there anybody got any questions before we move on? A question. We got a question, Chris.
Hi there. Hi, Dave, and thanks for being here. If you have I specialize in writing, it's a cross-genre thing. Very, very steamy romance, sort of 5 chilies of heat romance, but it's also romantic suspense, crossing over into pretty gory thrillers. Very yeah, cross romance. I aim at visceral, shall we say, visceral emotions, whether it be romance, erotica, suspense,
Hmm.
thrillers, serial killers. Any hints or suggestions on where keywords might go with something like that? Where it's a case of intensifying the experience for the reader.
Well, here's what I would do. So first and foremost, that's a really good question. And the reason why, like, for example, I'm not a really good consultant for like every type of book is because I don't know, like, I don't
Yeah.
truly know every genre as in depth as I should in order to give great advice. Now, that being said, though, it's like, for example, how many people have ever heard of lit RPG cultivation?
What?
Yep, lit RPG cultivation. So literature, role playing games, cultivation.
Oh, yeah, got you. Yeah, okay.
Ever, yeah.
Okay. But see, like I'm so engrossed in those that I know all the different subgenres of those. So like from wuxia to, a dungeon, like these are all very important terms. But that's because I know that genre. So whereas I don't know your genre, so I can't say that. But here's a really cool trick. If you have Publisher Rocket, we have this feature called Reverse
Yeah.
ASAN. All right. Go find books like yours because there are. And by the way, romance is one of those that is the most cross genre of all. You got
Yeah.
romantasy, you've got like, so they all exist. Go find books like yours. Put those books through the reverse ASAN process because what that does, the reverse ASAN will tell you all the keywords that that book ranks for. So now you get to see the words and phrases that Amazon associated with that book, and Amazon took action to show shoppers too. Now, all of a sudden, ask yourself, what? So when you see that list of all of their words, ask yourself, hey, is that a time period and setting? Is that a good phrase? Is that a good main character? Is that a good catalyst? Is that a good genre tone? Right? And now all of a sudden you can start learning some of the phrases. Like case in point, I was working with this author, and she was trying to figure out her time period and settings. And I'm like, I don't know that genre. I can't tell you. But we were going through and putting some of the books close to hers into Rocket, and we found that many of her competitors were ranking for things like Gaslamp. I was like, well, I don't get this Gaslamp. She goes, oh my goodness, that's right. I should have thought about that because that is actually a time period. That's a time period in like usually in England is usually thought of in the Industrial Revolution point where they started to use gas for their lamps instead of candles, and that's a known time period, and that's somehow a very well used term for exactly her book. And all of her competitors were targeting that time period and setting, and she didn't know that. And so you can use the reverse ASAN feature to see what's working for others, and then ask yourselves, oh man, that's a great way to describe the time period setting in my book, or that's a great way to describe the main character or the genre tone. These are all words that I should be using. So it takes the guesswork out of it, and you can just start taking from, what's made other books successful.
My apologies, but sorry, you won't remember me, but about 3-4 years ago, I sent you a question saying on some blog or other, I forget which was, and you answered me saying, is it possible to reverse engineer an ASAN to look at a book and see what keywords have you? And at the time you said, can't do that. Sorry,
Nope.
wish I could.
So what it was was,
I do have
that
Publisher Rocket.
awesome. So at the time you were asking if you could know what 7 phrases people put into their KDP. And at the time I had said, no, there's no way of knowing that because Amazon won't let that information out. And on top of that too, like you'd have to like hack people's accounts and that would like be not doable. However, though, what our system does is that it monitors all of Amazon and it's looking and it's tagging every time it sees a book come up for certain phrases and it's using well-known phrases. And so it's basically actively crawling. So when you put something into the reverse ASAN feature of Rocket, it's actually telling you where that book has benefited from keywords. Now, those keywords that it shows you might not be the keywords it used, but they are the words that Amazon said, okay, I believe that this book should show up for this. And I will send shoppers to that book for these phrases. So those phrases are actually better than the 7 KDP phrases the author chose. And the reason for that is sometimes Amazon doesn't use the words you use because they're like, this would be better. So you're actually seeing what phrases those books are actually benefiting from. And that's how we got around to be able to provide this list. So like I said, find one of your competitors or find a book just like yours, put it in the reverse ASIN feature. So you put in their ASIN number, that's why we call that. And then it's going to lay out every phrase on Amazon that that book has shown up for and had traffic for and had engagement on. And now you can see if any of those fit you.
I have to apologise because have you been talking to me? I've just opened Publisher Rocket on my other screen and I've just seen you have reverse ASIN lockup. And I'm sorry, I don't know how. I've not seen it before on the menu.
No, it's okay. We came out with that back in July, I think. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. So for anybody, like I said, as we continue to add and improve on the software, you always get a free update. So don't worry about it. Like if you owned it and now I come out with this new thing, you just get the benefit from it. We've always just made our updates free. So
I will be there.
That way it just gets better and better. Yes, ma'am.
I've got to tell you that one of the ad types, we do Amazon ads for people. One of the ad types, so we make 6 different ads, and one of the ad types is a reverse ad type. It uses the things, and it's one of our best ads. So we keep a track of all the different ad types we've used over the last 7 years. And we only keep the ones, we go through different types constantly. We drop the worst performer and we put in another and test it and keep dropping the worst performer. And the reverse ASIN is getting some great data. We've got a lot of reverse ASIN ads we've been using. We've got some good data on those. So yes, it's working. Okay, any more questions? Mary Rose.
Yeah, simple question. If you have contemporary fiction, is it essential? Is it essential in the description to say the time period?
Well, let's put it this way. There's an art to it, right? You don't want to just come out and say it, but there are ways that you can creatively build it in people's minds. And that is much more of a digestible sandwich than just coming out and saying, the year is 1921. But, you start using, like talking about the technology of the time, or the limits of the time, or something in that manner that makes them feel more a part of the world. Saying a number doesn't work, but giving them the visual of that world and that feeling already sucks them in. So that's what I mean by there's an art of it. And really, you'll start to see, like, an example of this is it really comes into not just your keywords. Your keywords are very important on that, but also your book description, okay? Your description can be something where you do detail. The year is 1920, or actually, let's go a little earlier. Let's say it's 1953, and Sarah has moved out to the prairies, with her husband saying he would follow her. She helps to establish the first house, and she's already friending neighbors but also learning about some of the dangers. Now, I gave you the details of the book. That sounded boring as all be, because we can take that up to a whole new notch. The wild frontier has opened beyond 1853. Sorry. The wild frontier is opened. And of course, as all of her New York friends have done, Sarah has taken the family and headed out west, only to find out that it is not what she was told. She is fighting the brutal cold, bringing her children, waiting for her husband to one day be there, and yet facing fierce opposition, not only from neighbors, but also from the natives. Every day she lives on the brink of death, whether or not she'll get food, whether or not, you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm saying the same details, but I'm building the energy inside of it. And that was really just off the cusp. Okay. Like, I'm sure there's a way better way to do it, but can you feel kind of like I'm giving you the details, but I'm entwining it with the importance of the story, the thrill, the danger, the excitement, just by choosing, like, living on a knife's edge, right? Not knowing whether or not her family will survive the day. The using words like the expansion into the West, and the prairie lands. Like, when I'm saying those, I don't have to say 1853 anymore. We all know it's the westward movement of settlers. And by the way, I guessed at 1853, it might have been 1820 or so when that was really happening. But we don't even need to know the year, because we know that feeling. We know that we're talking about settlers and the expansion into the prairie lands and, Indians. And I'm already, even if you didn't tell me, I'm already thinking about, the Indians and the battles that can happen. I'm already thinking of, any of the shows that I've seen where settlers have had. Like, all of a sudden, I'm more engaged into this because you didn't tell me the year. You told me all of the things that come with the story. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yeah, I have a little bit of a difficulty in the description because the chase, it's a murder and a chase. The chase is going to
Okay, so I get there and I do that, and then they send
Okay,
it
hold on. I'm
to
going to mute someone.
Albany,
Hold on.
go there.
Okay.
We've got a phone call.
Okay, so April 17th, 10.
I think that's Barbara. Yeah, I'm muting Barbara. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so they're going to a place that's 1,000 years old, So these are rooms, So that may be confusing, but it's contemporary sheriffs. And the only thing
Right.
I can think of immediately to put in is they have a tracking dog like the one they used to catch bin Laden.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not too sure, but what I will say though is that if you start to, like I said, do the reverse ASAN and see the phrases that people use and see if that heightens the story. If it adds more gravitas to what you're trying to do. And then also too, if there are descriptive phrases that you didn't think about, those really help to paint the story. And so they could be really key. But like I said in the beginning, I'm not as close to every genre, so I can't right off the cusp kind of think of those nuances. I can do it in sci-fi military. I could do it in lit RPG. My wife will definitely tell you I cannot do that in romance, but hey, to each their own. But yeah, so does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Pat.
Keywords.
Question. I've always used keywords from the Amazon prompts. Are you saying that we can write our own in instead?
Yes. So when you go to publish your book and you're in KDP,
Right.
when you're loading up the book, you'll see those 7 boxes, right? So you can put those in there. You can put whatever you find. Now, if you're using Amazon's prompts, that's okay. It's a good way to kind of see some of the phrases that Amazon said people.
No, but I don't have to use them. I don't have to.
No, you don't have to.
I thought I had to. And they're not very creative.
No, you can come up with your own phrases. If you're using a software like Publisher Rocket, though, Publisher Rocket will tell you the words that people type into Amazon, how many people type it, how much money books are making that rank for it, the competitor score. It will help you to know what words are helping books make money. So, go find like one of your competitors, put in the reverse ASAN, use those phrases, because those are the ones that are actually making results.
Thank you.
Yep.
Dave, are you a fan of also putting those keywords into your text book description?
Yes. So the key thing is that like keywords are the words that your shopper uses when looking for the book. No greater sales marketing than to use their own words, right? So if I type in, battle cruisers, sci-fi military battle cruiser interstellar, and my book description is not saying, the spaceships, were, having battles in space, but instead, the armada of battle cruisers in an everlasting interstellar war. Notice that again, I used the words that my market had to heighten and add to the sci-fi, if you will, of my book description. So I love using the keywords not only for my 7 KDP boxes, I love them for ideas on how to make my book description sound like the kind of story my readers want to read.
Sounds great. Okay, so we're not going to run on much longer. You've been really good to give us this time. Is there anything you want to wrap up with? Where are you going? What's coming this year for the Kindlepreneur world? Anything you can share with us?
Yeah. So just for this group, one of the big things that I've been getting heavily involved in is direct sales. Now it's funny that the guy who does Kindlepreneur is looking at direct sales. But the fact of the matter is that as authors start to build up their platforms and they have their following, I think it's ever more important that authors start to be able to sell directly to their shoppers and not depend on stores such as Amazon. And the reason for this is that when you can sell directly, first off, you're not at Amazon's mercy. The second thing is that let's say, for example, you have an email list and you have, say, 1,000 people, and you come out with your next book. If you sell directly, so you send out an email to your email list and they come and buy it on your website, you're not giving away 30% of your royalty straight to Amazon. You're getting to keep that. And so this is one of those opportunities that when you have your marketing, whether it's from Facebook or whether it's from your email list or whether it's from your social media or your following or YouTube, whatever it is that when you do that and you have your own store, you're immediately adding your royalties. You're adding to the profit margin from your sales. And I think that it's definitely a big part of the future for authors, especially as they grow. And so one of the things that I've been developing that, we're keeping it hush hush here. This will actually be the first time I say this, well, publicly, but let's call it not publicly, is we're building a direct sales website building software, and it's called a Reader Scout. And Reader Scout is basically, it's what you get if Shopify just focused on authors. And so that's just one of the projects that we're working on. But any author could build a professional looking, beautiful website that can sell their ebook, audiobook, and Audible book directly. So yeah, it's been a fun project.
Yeah, we like new things. We always like new things, technology, new stuff, things that are coming. So that's great news. Really excited to hear about that. I'm wishing you the best of luck getting it all finished and ready to tell the world. So thank you very much for that. Now, okay, do we have another question? No, everybody can find Dave. Just tell us where they can find you so that we all know.
Yeah. So I just one quick question I saw that Pat had posted, but you are add to costs, having books, shipping ads, etc. So yeah, so the key thing is that if you are doing direct sales, the cool thing is that the taxes are covered by the person buying the book. So if your book is listed, by the way, Amazon has the required amount, right? So if it's an ebook, you can only price it between $2.99 and $9.99. Otherwise, and if you do that, they take 30. If you price it outside of that, they take 70%. Now, if it's an ebook and somebody comes and buys it, and it's say $5.99 on your store, but $9.99 on Amazon, well, you're still actually making more money by selling it on your store, and your shopper is getting it for cheaper. So there's no added cost on that one. If it's a print book, what's really cool is that there's print on demands out there. So if somebody comes to your website and they buy the book, it might be $15 for the book. There's like shipping added, so the person pays the shipping just like they would on Amazon as well, and whatever taxes they pay just like on Amazon. But instead of Amazon taking that extra royalty out of there, they don't, and so you benefit from that. So again, while there are shipping costs and things like that, you're right. If you're doing advertisement to your own store, yes, that's true. There is advertisement also to Facebook. But the other cool thing, though, is that if you already have your email list or your following or anything like that, you're not paying for advertisement and you're just cutting out that royalty that Amazon should not take because they didn't do anything to help with that sale. So that's one of the reasons why it's a really cool opportunity for authors. And it's actually one of those where they can really improve their margins so long. And again, I'm going to say this, so long as they have a good way to drive people to their site. If you don't have a way for people to drive people, to bring people to your website, okay, then you should not do direct sales. I think it would be too hard of a waste of time. It would take away from you just writing and building. But once you have an email list, or once you have, great advertisements that can drive people, then might as well cut out Amazon's 30% anyways. Let that be handled yourself and have control. And by the way, everyone who buys your book through your website, you have their email list. Like, you have their email, which is great.
I think one of the big challenges, and people have tried to set up their own sites, one of the big challenges is that when people go to a site, they don't know who it is. They don't want to give their credit card. I think if there's momentum, if there are a lot of authors using a similar system and people become familiar with this is the X system, whatever you're going to call it, then the people will be more likely to put in their credit cards because they trust the system. So I think that's going to be crucial. So that there's a band, there's an army of authors using it is going to help everyone to just get the credit cards because they know it's going to be a trustworthy system. That's what Amazon has. They have the credit cards already. So that's really important. And I think you're in a good position to do that, to have a mass market, to build a mass market. So I wish you really good luck with that because it's really important. We can make more money and we get the email addresses. And we're not waiting for Amazon to cut us off for some weird rule that they decide to invent about something that we've done something wrong. We've got this feeling in our gut, oh, what did I do, to Amazon? So we got to be, so it's great. I really wish you luck with that. It's going to be a great deal for authors. Any final question from anybody? Okay. So thank you, Dave. That's really great. And thank you, everybody, for watching, for all of your time, for being here. Thank you very much. And everybody watching online later. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everybody, for watching. That's it, everybody. We had a great time. Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.